Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. You are listening to another live news flash, and we have a very, very exciting show for you today. It's because we were talking about this kind of day-old news that is still tearing things up all over everywhere, and that is obviously the Mar-a-Lago raid. That's what Donald Trump is calling it right now, of the by the FBI that took place sometime yesterday. Trump tweeted out about it, released a long statement, pretty much dominated the narrative about it very early on. So a lot of questions are very much unanswered on that front. Also, we're taking a look at primary night in America tonight. We have progressive win in Vermont and Illinois in Minnesota struggling to hold on off of her challenger, Dawn Samuels, but it looks like she will win. Also, a Bank of America memo is now praying for worse conditions for American workers, as it obviously, is dependent on them making continued profits. We'll fill you in on that. And also, big win for abortion rights in Kansas, as that deep red state just voted overwhelmingly to certify abortion rights just the other week. So we'll talk about what that means. And it's a very, very exciting show for everybody today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Spencer Walsh. All right, so we are starting today right at, the Winter White House, Mar-a-Lago, where a big raid took place yesterday. It was, and we're going to give you pretty much go through New York Times, tell you what we know, about this situation. It is a very, very interesting situation, because we are seeing more and more action on this. Of course, the first big news, obviously, is the statement, the tweet from Donald Trump. Not the tweet, but I think it was probably a Truth Social or something like that, and which was obviously quickly followed up with a much longer statement talking about in detail the FBI raided my home with large groups of agents, even broke into my safe. What we know from there was obviously there was a pretty strict warrant approved by a federal judge who apparently had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And was a Barack Obama donor, according to a headline I saw. But I don't know. I don't know how true that is. But I think really there are some interesting questions. Because obviously the biggest question now is what happens next. So we're going to give you some of the details here on what we know. So the search carried out on Monday by the FBI at former President Donald J. Trump's Florida home. A law enforcement action with explosive legal and political implications was the culmination of a lengthy conflict between the president and a president proud of his disdain for rules and officials charged with protecting the nation's records and secrets. So pretty much what they did here is what it's really starting to look like, at least from this report, is that they raided this guy's home. They raided Trump's home because he pretty much took classified documents or documents that were supposed to go in the National Archives, took them in, a big load, put them in a plane and took them to Mar-a-Lago. For what purpose? I don't know. But apparently that seems to be why there was a raid in the first place. So on one side were officials from the National Archives, which is responsible for making sure all presidential records are preserved according to the law, and the Justice Department, which some people familiar with the inquiry said had grown concerned about the whereabouts of possible classified information and whether Trump's team was being fully forthcoming. On the other was Trump, who, in apparent contravention of the Presidential Records Act, had taken a trove of material with him to his home in Mar-a-Lago when he left the White House that included sensitive documents, and, in the Justice Department's view, had failed to fully comply with requests that he return the disputed material. So pretty much, from what we can see, this is what it was about. There was a lot of hubbub, a lot of, the fact that the FBI raided Trump's home, like that is a big, big deal. But from what we see now, I feel like it's going to be hard, for a lot of liberals to get excited about this, because it's just presidential documents. Like, what is in the presidential documents? Like, you're making it, like, the way this is being reported is honestly making it sound like, they're taking what he wanted for lunch, they're raiding it because he took what he wanted for lunch. His lunch order one day. He took that with him. He took that record with him, and it was supposed to go like classified or something like that, or in the National Archives forever. And then now they're getting the Justice Department involved. Like that is to me kind of what it is looking like right now at this point. And the question is, what comes from this? I think chances are, the way the flow of the news works up until now to November, it's not going to be a pretty big issue, when people come to the polls. That is if, of course, nothing continues to happen on this front. Because I really think if we just get a raid and nothing else, it's going to be very, very hard for the public, for even the people who are super, super obsessed with politics, to really continue to get into this, because there's nothing to be getting into. There's nothing. There's no there because, They got a raid. They take documents. Were those all the documents they needed? Maybe they were. Maybe they'll be all done. Is that going to be the raid that is going to, really eat people up, Republicans up in November? I don't know. But if we find something more out about what was in these documents, why was Trump trying to hide them? Was it something to do with, for example, January 6th? Was it something to do with, he was making these plans, and this is obviously what a lot of people are thinking it is, especially on the more liberal side of things. He was raiding these documents. The documents they were really after was his detailed plans, in his safe, were his detailed plans about how he was going to, declare martial law at the right possible moment in, throughout the January 6th investigation, or something worse, or something of that vein, is what a lot of people would obviously assume there is something in there. I feel like, are they going to, with all the hemming and hawing the Justice Department has done on both sides when it comes to getting involved in politics, I feel like I would be quite surprised if they decided to raid Donald Trump's house just because, there were some pretty non-important presidential records he just happened to take behind because, he wanted to sell them or something like that. Some tacky Trump thing he would do. I think it's very unlikely they're going to make a big show of breaking into his house, raiding all this stuff. It was just some kind of irrelevant, documents from Trump's time in office at some point or another. So this investigation has bubbled along largely out of public view for months. Word that agents had arrived early Monday morning at the gates of Mar-a-Lago with a search warrant raised new questions about Trump's vulnerability to prosecution and fueled further partisan division. So Trump's aides and allies intensified their criticism of the search on Tuesday, calling it unnecessary and asserting, without citing any evidence, that it was a brazen use of prosecutorial power for political purposes. On a social media site on Tuesday, Trump cast the search as part of a coordinated attack that also includes state and local prosecutors, alluding to investigations into him being carried out in Georgia and New York. So, of course, obviously with Trump, this is all some grand, well-coordinated conspiracy to come, to get him, because that's always what it is. I think the big question is, what are in those documents? What is the FBI investigating him for? And when and how will they release information, if there even is information to release? Those are the big questions I have, because that, I think, is going to dictate how much people truly care about this thing. So Christina Bobb, a lawyer and aide to Trump, who said she received a copy of the search warrant, told one interviewer that agents were looking for presidential records or possibly any classified material, and that's, a very, very broad scope. Again, it's like presidential records, like writing a note to his aide, oh yeah, I want a hamburger from McDonald's today, not the Filet-O-Fish. Like, if you're raiding Mar-a-Lago for that, I think that's going to cause some blowback. If that's what it comes out, oh, we're raiding Mar-a-Lago for that, that is going to be, it's going to cause a problem. Is it going to be what people are going to vote on? No. It's going to energize the Republican base? Yeah. It's just going to energize them a little bit more to, go kick out Biden, go kick out the communists, whatever. And, we're seeing this time and time again. Like, we see all this hemming and hawing to a certain extent from these big online influencers who post pictures with their guns all the time, talking about how, when we go to sleep, we're going to war tomorrow once we wake up. Like, today, Tuesday, was supposed to be the war day. But it does not look like it is panning out that way, to say the least. But there has been plenty of breathless coverage on the right, but still very, I think, few details so far, because the Justice Department really has been so close-lipped on this, and Trump just kind of putting his own side of the story out of there. At the White House, President Biden's press secretary said he had no advance word of the decision to carry out the search at the Justice Department. Attorney General Merrick Garland maintained public silence about the momentous step, which I think is, going to be a mistake, and it really has been, unfortunately, a hallmark of this administration: staying quiet, staying silent, not being transparent, not being, telling the people what is going on. And this is in a variety of different areas for quite a long time, and until it's too late, and the narrative has already been made for them. It's a very Democrat thing to do. It's a very Joe Biden thing to do, but. Despite Trump's suggestions that an army of agents raided Mar-a-Lago and stormed through his home, the FBI conducted a search on the day that Trump was out of town and the club was closed. The agents carried out the search in a relatively low-key manner, people with knowledge of the matter said. By some accounts, they were not seen donning the conspicuous navy blue jackets with the agency's initials emblazoned on the back that are commonly worn during execution of search warrants. They kind of maybe stayed low-key, according to this is what probably the FBI is leaking here to the New York Times. Another person familiar with the search said agents began going through a storage unit where items like beach chairs and umbrellas are kept, but in the basement, they progressed to his main office, which was built for him on the second floor of the main house, where they cracked a hotel-style safe that was said by two people briefed on the search to contain nothing of consequence to the agents. Ultimately, they moved to Trump's residence, the person said. Ultimately, they removed a number of boxes and documents. People familiar with the search said it is not clear what the agents were looking for or what they took, nor is it clear whether the search was carried out simply to ensure the documents and other material were probably turned over to archives, or it was a possible precursor to a prosecution of Trump for mishandling classified material or obstructing efforts to get it back. And I'm sorry, if you're going to ring Trump up on obstructing access to classified material, it's going to have to be some really good classified material if you want to get people to care, because people do not care about any of this stuff. Like, inflation is going on. You got cost of living going up all over the country for so many different people. No one is addressing that. And if you see we're raiding Donald Trump to get back some classified documents, if I was Joe Biden, that is not what I would want to be talking about right now, because it just doesn't look good for the Democratic Party. I really don't think. If there's so little we know, we don't know the purpose of what exactly was going on. But if the most serious thing for Donald Trump is he mishandled classified documents and obstructed efforts to get them back, I don't think that's going to be a slam dunk, a political slam dunk. It's not going to be, it's going to be like that old tweet, where old Donnie, effortlessly wriggles his way out of this one, because it's just not that hard. So throughout his presidency, Trump was disdainful of record preservation laws and was known to tear up documents, in some cases flush them down toilets. It's not clear whether he sought to hold on to material sought by the archives and the Justice Department to keep it away from public scrutiny, or for some other reason. A close look at the investigation, though, shows it's been quietly picking up steam for much of this year, introducing a new element into the questions about Trump's varied and intensifying legal problems and his political viability, even as he hints at another run for the presidency. For many months before he left office, Trump would tell aides to bring documents up to the residence for him while he was in the Oval Office, and they compiled, but there was no process in place, meaning the officials whose job it was to keep track of the paperwork pretty much did not know exactly what had gone up there, according to people familiar with the event. So pretty much he was the only one who knew really where everything was, which obviously going to cause a bit of a problem. Discussions were held within the White House by top staff members about how to get Trump to surrender the boxes, Mr. President. People familiar with the event said, but it is unclear whether Trump was ever asked directly or officials simply did not take the issue to him. When he left the White House, Trump took boxes with him to Mar-a-Lago, packed with paperwork, including letters from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and the former president's Sharpie Gate map of the path of a hurricane. Wow. So there's some memorable Trump moments in there, along with the personal items like golf balls and a raincoat and other, various things stuffed in, pretty much packing. And he pretty much took the Kim Jong-un letter, as a souvenir. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to sell it or something. That is the person we are dealing with here. So the National Archives pretty much was like, a lot of these important documents that we need by law are missing, so this pretty much sets off a fight. But again, are Americans going to be really worked up that Trump is in this intense legal battle with a museum? That's how people are going to see it. And honestly, I think they are probably right to see it that way. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our next story. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our segment to tell you all about what's going on here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network this summer. We do, as I'm sure you know, have a great lineup available for you. We, of course, start with our flagship show, Newsflash, all new Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Uncultured, irregularly, back every Saturday with live music and sports analysis with my co-host for the summer, Bennett Laxton. Hidden History will be brand new every Thursday on a bit of a hiatus, but will return shortly. It's the summer of podcasting. It's the summer of sounds. All you got to do is just keep listening wherever you get your podcasts, always here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to take a little bit of a whip around the primary night scene, keeping you posted on some of the latest results here. Let's go now to Ilhan Omar, an 84% reporting, 50.5%. She's got a majority right now, but Don Samuels nipping at her heels with 48%. In what kind of turned out to be a very interesting race that, to be honest, I have not been following too much, but I'm sure, she is obviously one of Congress's most prominent lawmakers. She's favored to win a primary. She's racked up endorsements from Democratic state and federal lawmakers and has been a pretty prolific fundraiser, doing it the actual, ethical way of not doing it through these big PACs and a lot of kind of unprecedented spending on the other side. She got $2.3 million in total contributions. If she gets the nomination, she would enter the general election with nearly $500,000 in cash on hand. She's facing a pretty strong centrist opponent, though, in Don Samuels, as you can tell by the results here. Samuels has the support of some of the Democratic establishment, including Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, who is really unpopular there with the activist community and just, I feel like the way I read it, the way I understand, people closer to Minnesota may disagree with this, but the way he's unpopular with the activist community, unpopular with the, more conservative elements of the city, just somebody who is really kind of trying to please everybody and then ending up pleasing nobody. Omar has become a pretty powerful voice on issues like racial justice and police reform, but she has been cast as divisive by her opponents and has at times found herself at odds with the Democratic establishment. Central to her primary clashes have been the issue of policing, as calls for reform have reverberated around Minneapolis, sparking uproar. And I think, if you look at Ilhan Omar, and I think, I can't look obviously too much into the result. I'd have to really do more research to speak effectively on it. But if you look at what the squad has been doing, I feel like they have lost a lot of their organizational muscle, lost a lot of their confidence, lost a lot of their position in the Democratic Party, and I think that's a big reason why we're seeing this kind of result. It's a tight squeeze. Samuels, and a lot of this obviously has to do with this police reform amendment last year, replacing the Minneapolis Police Department with a new Department of Public Safety. Minneapolis voters struck it down. Samuel's campaign to defeat it has told the Star Tribune that Omar's support for the measure motivated him to run against her. He also noticed that he was among 8 Minneapolis residents who successfully sued to increase the number of police officers. On the Republican side, Cecily Davis is going to be the one challenging her. Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley are the only primary challenge, or the only squad members who did not draw any primary challengers this cycle. Omar is the first woman of color elected to Congress from Minnesota, as well as one of the first of 2 Muslim American women elected to Congress. She's the favorite of progressives and beat her last well-financed challenger, Anton Melton Mew, by 20 percentage points. So pro-Israel groups have been obviously spending pretty big in this race. AIPAC had backed Anton Melton Mew, and let me just do a quick double check if they backed Don Samuels. I'm going to guess yes, they did. And that seemed, Don Samuels. Let's just do a double check here. All right, so it's unclear yet. We're going to have to look up a little bit more. And the first slate of endorsements, unclear. All right, we're going to have to go. I can't, unfortunately can't do all the looking up here on this live show, but I do know Anton Melton was heavily funded. This is the 2020 primary challenger, was heavily funded by establishment and pro-Israel groups who have also been spending pretty heavily, not just against Omar, but against Rashida Tlaib, and continue to be going pretty hard against a lot of these progressive women of color here. So two other squad members, again, Cori Bush of Missouri and Rashid Tlaib, recently beat back their second straight primary challenges, and Jamal Bowman of New York is facing 3 primary challenges later this month, though he seems to be in a bit of a better position, a stronger position there. And I think, if you look at Omar, I think a lot of it is, the squad. She is not looking just at the same level. AOC, Rashid Tlaib, they're just not as active, not as powerful within the Democratic Party. So their constituencies, their bases are just not being mobilized in the same way. That's, if I had to look at it in a very kind of cursory way, that is about how I would kind of see it. But it still is. There is no reason Ilhan Omar should have a race this close by any stretch of the imagination. But we do want to look at some of the other races in this situation. So U.S. Senate, Peter Welch, easily in Vermont, is a very kind of interesting situation. Peter Welch, Democrat in office in 2007, he's stepping down to run for Pat Leahy's seat in Vermont, the junior senator. No, I believe Bernie is actually the junior senator. Pat Leahy was actually the oldest senator. He's retiring now. Peter Welch is going to take his place, essentially a slightly younger version of him. But interesting enough, in the House, we have a progressive situation where Becca Balint, pretty much running as a Bernie-style candidate, won easily with 61% of the vote. Molly Gray, the second place candidate, who got 36% of the vote, she kind of ran attacking somebody, Balint as being too close to Bernie Sanders in Vermont. Of all the places to attack someone for being too close to Bernie Sanders, Vermont is probably the worst place you can do it. And she found that out the hard way with a big loss tonight. So that Ilhan Omar race, though, is going to be something interesting that I think progressives should be looking at and, processing very, very closely. And that is, that is going to be something really worth watching. So let's move on to our next story with Bank of America. A Bank of America executive actually stated that, quote, "We hope working Americans will lose leverage in the labor market," in a recent private memo obtained by The Intercept, making predictions for clients about the U.S. economy over the next several years. The memo also noted that changes in the percentage rate of Americans seeking new jobs should help push up the unemployment rate. Hopefully. The memo, a media review from June 17th, was written by Ethan Harris, the head of the global economic research for the corporation's investment banking arm, Bank of America Securities. Its specific aspiration: by the end of next year, we hope the ratio of job openings to unemployed is down to the more normal highs of the last business cycle. So pretty much what we're hoping is, not all these businesses are looking for hiring. We hope that the supply of labor, or the available jobs are begin to close. The supply of options for laborers continues to go down and down. Workers are pushed into more unsatisfactory options. That is what they want. That is what they're designing policy for. They're not designing policy. The interest rates are not going up to fix inflation. That is not the focus. They're interested in to raise up unemployment, to destroy this kind of labor market that we're seeing here. That is the overall goal. That is the overall policy, and it always has been. So they're right. The memo comes at The Intercept here. The memo comes amid a push by the Federal Reserve to cool down the economy, much of it informed here by the same rationale that high wages are driving inflation. Like, Americans, their wages are just going up too high. Wage price spiral here. This year, the Fed has increased interest rates for the first time since 2018. Historically, this has often caused recessions, and that is pretty much exactly what appears to be happening now. So a recession pretty much, according to the Department of Commerce here, has already begun. Parts of the menu review, in particular its emphasis on a looming recession, received press coverage at the time of the memo's release to clients. This is the first publication here in The Intercept of its document in full. So The Intercept getting this exclusive leak here from Ken Klippenstein. What the memo calls the ratio of job openings to unemployed is generally calculated the other way around, the ratio of unemployed people to job openings. The more widely used ratio offers one measurement of the balance of power between workers and employers. To lower this number, the more unemployed people have, the more options unemployed people have when searching for work, and greater opportunities employed people have to switch jobs with better pay and conditions. So that is the ratio of unemployed people to job openings. So pretty much the unemployment rate there. The availability of jobs. It's not going to be the unemployment rate. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the ratio stood at 0.5 as of May. Meaning there were 2 job openings per unemployed person. So any unemployed person on average in America wants to leave their job. As of May, any unemployed person wants to leave their job. They have pretty much 2 good options very easily. In 2009, at one of the worst moments of the economic calamity that followed the collapse of the housing bubble during the end of the George W. Bush administration, the ratio climbed as high as 6.5. So there were more than 6 unemployed workers for each open job, then slowly declined over the next decade, reaching 0.8 in February 2000 before the COVID-19 lockdowns began. This recent unusual moment of worker leverage made Bank of America quite anxious. So Memo expresses distress at a record-tight labor market, stating wage pressures are going to be hard to reverse. While there may have been some one-off increases in some pockets of the labor market, the upward pressure extends to virtually every industry, income, and skill level. The memo recalls a previous Bank of America memo, which it says warned of very strong momentum in the labor market, suggesting the economy would not just hit but blow through full employment. Fast forward today, and these trends have been far worse than expected. So pretty much what they're saying is the power of workers is growing now even more. The pressure, the options that they have are growing even more, and we're getting even more concerned about it. We need it to stop. These are the people who buy politicians. These are the people who make the economy run. And if they're concerned about that, I think that is something to absolutely watch with very, very close attention. My name is Spencer Walsh. This is the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, and if you're listening to one of our podcasts, whether it's Newsflash, Hidden History, The Spencer Walsh Show, or something else, ladies and gentlemen, we have one simple request of you. Please be sure to rate us, subscribe to us if you like us, and leave us a comment, because just like all of you, sometimes we need that feedback in our lives, good or bad. We want to hear what you have to say. So please do those steps. Make SWR content better. And thank you so much for listening. You are listening to Newsflash right here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. Moving on now to our last story today from Natasha Leonard in The Intercepts. So a really cool, good news story. The resounding ballot victory to keep abortion protection in the state constitution of Deep Red, Kansas is a rebuke to the Republicans' far-right agenda. It's a win worth celebrating. The stakes of preserving legal abortion could not be higher. It's a reminder, especially in Kansas. If you got legal abortion in Kansas, that's kind of a mecca for a lot of red states, women in red states in the Midwest. It is a reminder, too, of what those on the front lines of the struggle have long known. Banning abortions is popular only with an extremist yet extremely powerful Christo-fascist minority. Since the GOP has made it clear its comfort with indeed explicit desire for the entrenchment of far-right minority rule, the Kansas result will not shift the party's priorities. They'll still push. They have these same priorities. The base of the Christian right, religious right, is firmly in control in the Republican Party in Kansas. Republicans will still push their pro-natalist, white supremacist agenda of taking bodily autonomy away from women and pregnant people. There's no lesson in Kansas for Republicans. It's the Democratic establishment that instead should take a cue from this Kansas victory. The referendum result was, after all, a rebuke to a long-held centrist shibboleth, the same guiding principle that has failed to deliver nationwide abortion protections, let alone robust reproductive justice. So-called moderate Democrats have consistently dismissed and kneecapped its progressive flank and left-wing efforts more generally as out of touch with what much mythologized the blue collar middle American doesn't want to hear you talk about abortion. They don't want to hear you going on and on about that stuff. In the middle of the country in Kansas, you think they're caring about abortion? No, they're just caring about how they're going to put food on the table and feed their families. You're just a privileged coastal elitist liberal. That is what you hear all day from people like Nancy Pelosi, from people who are making the big money, the spending decisions in the Democratic Party, the people who decide which campaigns win and which campaigns don't. Those are the people who have been consistently telling you all the time since Obama, since before Obama, since every single chance the Democrats had to actually codify abortion protections into law. Every single time that's happened, we've just seen a huge amount of scolding from the centrist members of the Democratic Party. This is gonna screw up our chances. The loony leftists are at it again. And what do we see in Kansas? What do we see here? What do we see here? But the complete reverse. Massive win in deep red Kansas for abortion rights here. Following the Supreme Court decision in Dobbs versus Jackson to throw out constitutional abortion rights, the White House cast calls for full-throated federal action to protect abortion as extreme. Joe Biden's goal in response to Dobbs is not to satisfy some activists. Again, this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. Some activists. Actually, it's a far majority of Kansas voters. Some activists, my ass, frankly. White House Director Kate Bedingfield there with that line. We're not going to, satisfy some activists by protecting basic women's rights in the 21st century. No, we're going to satisfy actually by doing that most of the country, far majority of the country. The principle has been put into electoral action by the party's establishment as Democrats in Washington have worked on the assumption that running anti-abortion candidates is a route to winning in red states. Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, continuing to support Henry Cuellar, the most anti-abortion House Democrat, against a progressive primary challenger. Democrats, including Biden, have wisely responded to the Kansas victory by putting abortion rights in the foreground heading into the midterms. The court practically dared women in the country to go to the ballot box to restore the right to choose, said Biden on Wednesday. Given Republicans' clear plans for passing nationwide abortion ban should they win congressional majorities in November, voting is indeed crucial. But Democrats need to do more than not just be Republicans. They need to be bold. They need to, for the first time, show that they have learned something. They have learned that if they say what they're, if they act to, try and mobilize a base, try and, actually say to people, we will do X for you if you do Y for us, as in voting. I feel like I'm always saying this about the Democratic Party. Then that actually might get them somewhere. Or if there's a clear choice on the ballot, like protect abortion, don't protect abortion. X, do Y. So that is the big thing there. That is the big thing that we're seeing. Will the Democrats? I do feel like there's a certain liberal left sect of the Democratic Party that will not be shy about the Kamala Harris types. They're not going to be shy, I think, about protecting abortion rights. But the old guard, the older generation of the Democratic Party, the people like Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, Joe Biden, in fact, are people that I worry about because they are still very part of this orthodoxy. It's like it's dangerous to talk about it. Every time you say the word abortion, one blue collar voter turns you off and forgets about you forever. There's just this delusion that has been disproven now, I think, hopefully, thoroughly, logically, hopefully disproven for good. But, the Democratic Party is not always prone to operating on logic. All right, so yeah. Let's take a look at, we're not live often, so we don't get chats often, but we do have some chats I want to end the show with today. We always love some chat interaction on the live stream. Some comments here from, Nicholas on the chat bar, talking about how the Fed has two mandates by law: full employment and low inflation. They have to do both. And I think it's obviously the Fed has their mandates, but the Fed makes policy, I think, in with other incentives in mind. Jerome Powell is not waking up every day reading the Federal Reserve, charter, I think is their governing document there, and saying, how do I follow this to the best of my ability? No, he's saying, how do I make the economy work the way I think it should work, the way I learned it should work in economic school, the orthodoxy, the exact way it should work, which is what it says. Anytime there's inflation, it's because the wages are too high. This is, is what he's doing here is putting a long-trodden, long-held economic orthodoxy into practice. I think it has very little to do with the Federal Reserve mandates. And for a lot of people that have big control over this economy, full employment and low inflation are impossible. Like, they don't care about full employment; they just care about low inflation. All right. Nicholas Walsh again writing there. My dad chiming in with the comment. Let's put 3 more judges on SCOTUS. They need some more subs for their softball games. Yeah, that would be interesting. I'm surprised to hear my dad coming in, chiming in for support of packing the court. I don't know. That is something that I did not see coming. That may be a new position for him. Maybe on the show to talk about it sometime soon. But anyway, yeah, thanks, Dad, for the comments. I do appreciate it. But that is all the time that we have for today. We're back on Thursday. This is Newsflash.